Flynn Parker was trying his best to disappear behind a narrow, overloaded bookshelf when Kira Lambert's sharp eyes caught him. He wasn't attempting stealth with any real conviction, though. His imposing 6'2" frame was awkwardly folded into a crouch, practically swallowing the colorful covers of the mass-market romance section. Worse, a pair of highly polished, expensive designer shoes were peeking conspicuously from beneath the lowest shelf. It would have been genuinely laugh-out-loud funny if the grim anxiety twisting his features weren't so obvious. "Are you all right back there? Or should I call security?" Kira asked, subtly leaning into the aisle to get a better look at the peculiar man. She had been on a mission, hunting for the much-anticipated new historical fiction release that dominated all the literary buzz, when the sight of the distressed man had stopped her cold. Flynn's rich brown eyes immediately blew wide with genuine alarm. "Shoo!" he hissed, his voice a low, frantic expulsion of air. He instantly seemed to regret the abrupt rudeness. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, but please keep your voice down." His eyes frantically scanned past the racks toward the front entrance of the independent bookstore. Kira followed his worried gaze. Near the antique wooden checkout counter stood an elegantly coiffed older woman engaged in conversation with an equally pristine, if somewhat bored-looking, younger woman. The tableau screamed tailored tweed and inherited wealth. "Let me hazard a guess," Kira whispered, dropping into an easy crouch beside him, a smile playing on her lips. "A blind date gone horribly wrong? Worse," Flynn muttered, his voice ragged with defeat. "A mother-engineered blind date. That formidable woman over there is my mother, Eleanor, and the poor soul with her is Jessica, the daughter of one of her country club compatriots." He dragged a trembling hand through his thick, dark hair, causing it to stand up slightly in disarray, a perfect reflection of his internal chaos. "This is the third accidental meeting she's set up for me this month alone." Kira couldn't stop the soft, genuine peal of laughter that escaped her. "And you're what, 28? 32, he corrected, sighing dramatically. "And apparently that's prehistoric in my mother's estimation. She's entirely convinced I'll die alone, surrounded only by my—" He cut himself off abruptly, his shoulders stiffening. "Surrounded by your what?" Kira prompted, intrigued by the sudden silence and the intensity in his eyes. "Nothing. Just work stuff. It's unimportant," Flynn stammered, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Look, I know this is entirely bizarre, but I am desperate. Could you possibly help me stage an extraction? There's a discreet back exit by the staff room, but they will absolutely spot me if I just make a dash for the door." Kira glanced at the slim watch on her wrist. Her afternoon schedule was blessedly empty, consisting mostly of getting home before the autumn chill truly set in. But there was something undeniably appealing about the stranger's predicament, coupled with the genuine warmth emanating from his anxious brown eyes, that made her want to commit to the bit. "What exactly did you have in mind for this highly covert operation?" Flynn's relief was immediate and almost painful to witness. "I don't know. Create some kind of noisy distraction? Or pretend to be my incredibly captivating girlfriend? I am truly at the end of my rope here. Pretending to be your girlfriend seems a bit excessive for a person whose name I don't even know yet," Kira pointed out, raising a skeptical eyebrow. "Flynn Parker," he responded instantly, offering a large hand awkwardly from his cramped position. "And you are the legendary Kira Lambert?" She shook his hand, registering the unexpected warmth and firmness of his grip. "All right, Flynn Parker," she declared, pulling her hand back. "Today is apparently your lucky day. I'm feeling disproportionately generous, and frankly, I adore participating in a well-executed escape plan." A genuine, dazzling smile transformed Flynn's face, instantly smoothing out the worried creases etched around his eyes. "You are saving my life, Kira. Literally. Don't send the thank you card just yet," Kira cautioned. "Your mother looks pretty laser-focused." She peered discreetly around the edge of the bookshelf. The elegant woman, Eleanor, was now performing a slow, calculated scan of the store, looking like a hawk spotting prey. "Okay, here is the modified plan," Kira whispered, thinking rapidly. I'll approach them and the clerk. Make sure they are deeply preoccupied. By asking for help finding a specific book, something incredibly obscure and technical. While they are fully distracted, you use the opportunity to slip out through the back. Deal? Flynn nodded vigorously, eyes burning with hope. Deal. I owe you everything. Kira stood, smoothing down the skirt of her simple, deep blue dress, and walked with purposeful confidence toward the front of the store. As she neared Flynn's mother and the prospective date, she adopted her most earnest, subtly perplexed customer expression. "Excuse me," she said, addressing the young store clerk who had just finished restocking a pile of new arrivals and was now chatting with Eleanor and Jessica. "I am searching for a very specific and rather rare text on architectural history in post-war Central Europe. It's highly technical, and I was told this particular branch might have it." As Kira launched into a complex, elaborate description of her fictional volume, skillfully weaving in made-up authors and precise, non-existent details about specific construction techniques, she observed Flynn's mother and Jessica subtly drifting away from the counter, their interest visibly waning the deeper she got into concrete block reconstruction versus brutalism. From the periphery of her vision, Kira saw Flynn make his decisive move. He slipped silently behind a towering display of oversized art books, melting into the shadows, and heading swiftly toward the employees' only area at the back. The clerk, though apologetic that they didn't stock the title, remained helpful, diligently offering to special order the non-existent book. Kira maintained the charade for a few more strategic minutes until she was absolutely certain Flynn had secured his freedom. "Actually, I just remembered the title is terribly out of print," she said smoothly, offering a bright smile. "I believe I'll try the specialist used bookstore downtown instead. Thank you so much for your time and assistance." As she turned to leave, she nearly walked straight into Eleanor, Flynn's mother. "I couldn't help but overhear your fascinating inquiry," the older woman said, her tone perfectly polished but slightly probing. "Are you an architect yourself, dear?" "Oh no," Kira replied effortlessly, maintaining her smooth demeanor. "Just a devoted hobbyist. I have always been deeply fascinated by buildings and the unique stories they tell about the people who create them." Eleanor nodded, appearing to lose interest the moment she realized Kira wasn't a professional connection. Kira seized the brief opportunity and made her own swift exit. Outside, the late afternoon autumn air was sharp and invigorating, and the main street was bustling with the flow of weekend shoppers. Kira was contemplating crossing the street to reward her efforts with a good latte when a gentle, warm pressure touched her arm. "That was absolutely brilliant," Flynn whispered, his eyes sparkling with raw gratitude and amusement. "Architectural history? You had me completely convinced. I thought you were about to pull out blueprints." Kira laughed, the tension finally dissipating. "I took exactly one architecture survey class in college. I figured I could bluff my way through if the stakes were high enough." "Well, the bluff worked flawlessly," Flynn confirmed, shaking his head in amazement. "My mother is still in there. She's probably interrogating Jessica about her 5-year investment plan right now." He visibly shuddered at the thought. "Can I at least buy you that coffee? It's the very least I can do for my hero, my rescuer." There was an appealing, disarming earnestness in his request. Kira found herself nodding before she could overthink it. "Sure, why not? There's an excellent little place directly across the street." As they waited for the crosswalk light to change, Flynn glanced back one last time at the bookstore's facade. "I should feel deeply guilty, but honestly, this is the third coincidental setup this month. My mother's methods are becoming desperate." "Why?" Kira asked immediately, then regretted the slightly forward tone. "You seem perfectly capable of finding your own dates." Flynn, however, looked pleased rather than offended. "Thank you for the unexpected vote of confidence. I think my mother operates under the distinct fear that I work too much. She has this persistent nightmare that I'll wake up at 60 and realize I've forgotten to actually have a life outside of the office." The cafe they entered was a warm, welcoming refuge, the air thick with the rich, complex aroma of dark roast coffee and cinnamon. They found a small, slightly secluded table near the window. Flynn insisted on ordering for both of them, treating her like a valued client rather than a stranger he'd just met hiding behind mass-market paperbacks. "So, what exactly is it that you do that keeps you so incredibly busy?" Kira asked once the barista had collected their order slips. "I'm in real estate development," Flynn replied quickly, perhaps a beat too quickly, his demeanor instantly turning professional. "And what about you, the architectural historian in residence?" "I'm a librarian at the university," Kira admitted. "Nothing quite as exciting or high-stakes as real estate, I assure you." Flynn's face brightened considerably. "A librarian. That explains the astonishingly convincing book talk. Do you actually enjoy it?" "I genuinely love it," Kira said, slightly surprised by the genuine depth of his interest. "Every day is different. Students and faculty come in searching for everything from rare, obscure medieval texts to cutting-edge modern economic theories. It often feels less like a job and more like a never-ending, highly specific treasure hunt." Their coffee arrived, a creamy latte for her and a severe black coffee for him. They settled into an easy, flowing conversation. Kira found herself spontaneously sharing lighthearted anecdotes about her most eccentric library patrons, while Flynn, in turn, talked about the unique experience of growing up with a mother who held incredibly strong opinions on everything, from his chosen career path to his required sock selection. "So," Kira finally ventured, taking a sip of her latte, "why are you so resistant to your mother's persistent matchmaking attempts?" "Jessica seemed perfectly nice from the fleeting glimpse I caught." Flynn leaned back slightly, a shadow of seriousness crossing his face. "It's not truly about Jessica specifically. It's about the fundamental desire to meet someone naturally, authentically, not because our respective mothers have determined that our investment portfolios are compatible." He hesitated, looking down at his coffee cup. "I want what my parents had before my dad passed away. They met totally randomly at a bus stop during a rainstorm. No setup, no hidden agenda, just two people connecting because they happened to be in the right place at the right time." There was a genuine vulnerability in his expression that instantly softened Kira's heart. "That's surprisingly romantic for a hardened real estate developer." "Don't tell anyone," he warned, flashing a teasing smile. "It would absolutely ruin my meticulously crafted reputation as a ruthless businessman." There was a profound warmth in his eyes, however, that made Kira feel as though they had known each other far longer than just the past hour. As they finished their drinks, Flynn checked his watch with a noticeable reluctance. "I probably should be getting back to work. I have a few vital calls to make before dinner." He looked genuinely disappointed to be leaving. "But I would really like to see you again, Kira," he added, his voice low. "Properly this time. No hiding behind the bodice rippers in the romance section." "I'd like that, too," Kira admitted, slightly surprised by the sincerity of her own feeling. They exchanged phone numbers. Flynn walked her all the way to her car, extracting a promise that she would text him the moment she got home safely. As she drove away, Kira couldn't stop the wide, genuine smile that kept creeping onto her face. What had begun as a simple, mundane trip to browse for a book had morphed into an unexpected encounter that felt, quite strangely, like the very beginning of something truly significant. What Kira didn't yet realize was just how significant Flynn Parker truly was. His casual description of his occupation, real estate development, was a profound understatement of his actual position and influence. Parker Developments wasn't merely a real estate company. It was, in fact, one of the largest and most prestigious privately owned development firms operating on the entire East Coast. Their portfolio ranged from ultra-luxury, high-rise condominiums to groundbreaking revitalized urban spaces. And Flynn wasn't just working there. He was the owner and the CEO, having built the modern, sprawling empire from the solid, but small portfolio of properties he had inherited from his late father. The following evening, Kira was curled up comfortably on her sofa with a novel when her phone vibrated, signaling a text from Flynn. "Dinner tomorrow night. I know a place with truly excellent architectural history." Kira smiled broadly at the reference to her clever bookstore fabrication. Asterisk sounds perfect. As long as there are no surprise blind dates lurking around corners. Asterisk I promise. Just the two of us. I'll pick you up at 7. After exchanging a few more messages and her home address, Kira attempted to return to her book, but found it impossible to concentrate. There was an intense quality about Flynn that intrigued her. A palpable sincerity and depth beneath his effortlessly polished, businessman exterior that she rarely encountered in her usually quiet life. When Flynn arrived the next evening, Kira was momentarily surprised to see him driving a modest, though impeccably maintained, dark sedan, rather than the conspicuous, flashy sports car she might have stereotypically expected from someone working in high-end real estate development. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said as she opened the door to her apartment, his warm eyes taking in the simplicity of her black dress with genuine, unforced appreciation. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly feeling a pleasant wave of shyness. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Parker." Flynn drove them several blocks to a small, hidden Italian restaurant tucked away on a dimly lit side street. It wasn't flashy or ostentatious in the slightest, but the moment they stepped inside, Kira could sense that this place was special. The lighting was soft and warm, the decor was elegant yet comforting, and the intoxicating aromas wafting from the kitchen were instantly mouth-watering. Marco, the elderly Italian owner, immediately hurried over to greet them like a long-lost son. "Mr. Parker, your usual table is ready and waiting." Flynn thanked him easily and turned to Kira. "Marco makes the best, most authentic risotto in the entire city. I discovered this place completely by accident years ago when one of my early projects was being developed nearby." They were led to a cozy, secluded corner table. Marco himself brought them wine without having to be asked. "The special bottle as you requested," he murmured to Flynn with a knowing, conspiratorial smile. As they settled in, Kira couldn't help noticing how familiar and easy the entire staff seemed with Flynn. "You must frequent this place often," she observed. "Whenever I can possibly manage it," Flynn admitted, leaning forward slightly. "It's one of the very few places where I feel I can genuinely relax and just be myself, without the need for the usual performance." There was an underlying tone in his voice that instantly piqued Kira's curiosity. "And who exactly are you when you're not being yourself?" Flynn looked momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected depth of the question. "That is a surprisingly profound question for a first official date." He smiled, but Kira watched him consider his answer carefully. "I suppose what I mean is that in my line of work, there is a substantial amount of performance required. Non-stop meetings, aggressive presentations, delicate negotiations. Here, at Marco's, I'm just a guy who truly appreciates excellent food and wonderful company." Kira nodded, sensing there was more nuance to his answer, but deciding not to push the issue. Instead, she happily shared more stories about her life at the university library. The eccentric, tenure-track professor who always returned his books with delicately pressed flowers tucked between the pages, and her own quiet, deep passion for literature. Flynn listened intently, asking follow-up questions that demonstrated he was truly engaged, not just waiting for his turn to speak. By the time their main courses arrived, they had effortlessly covered an astonishing range of topics, everything from their favorite childhood books to their most painfully embarrassing college moments. "So," Kira said, as they shared a perfectly textured tiramisu for dessert, "tell me one thing about yourself that would genuinely surprise me." Flynn took a thoughtful sip of his espresso. "Considering, I build furniture in my spare time. Nothing terribly professional or fancy, just simple pieces, tables, a few custom bookshelves. There's something incredibly satisfying about creating something tangible with your hands, especially when the majority of my actual work involves ephemeral deals and endless paperwork." "That is actually really cool," Kira said, genuinely impressed by the unexpected revelation. "I would love to see some of your work sometime." "I'd like that very much," Flynn replied, his eyes warming significantly. "What about you? What revelation would surprise me about the mysterious Kira Lambert?" "I'm writing a children's book," she admitted, leaning closer. "It's a quiet little story about a young girl who discovers a hidden, secret library where all the fictional characters can come out of their books and walk around at night. No one knows about it except my sister." "Now you are making me feel truly inadequate with my amateur carpentry hobby," Flynn teased playfully. That sounds absolutely amazing, Kira. Are you planning to publish it? Maybe someday, she replied. Right now it's just for me. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Marco insisted on hugging both of them, treating Kira like an old family friend rather than a new acquaintance. Outside, the night air was clear and cool, with a surprising number of stars visible despite the ambient city lights. It's still early, Flynn said, his hand lingering near her elbow. Would you like to walk for a bit? There's a beautiful, quiet park just a few blocks from here. The park was serene, the pathways dimly lit by charming, vintage-style gas lamps. They walked close together, their hands occasionally brushing with electric, hesitant contact, until Flynn gently, deliberately, took her hand in his. The simple, immediate contact sent a profound warmth through Kira that was entirely unrelated to the temperature outside. Can I ask you something that's been on my mind? Kira asked, as they paused by a small, bubbling fountain. Why were you so desperately determined to avoid that setup with Jessica? From the tiny glimpse I had, she seemed perfectly pleasant. Flynn sighed, his breath momentarily misting in the cool air. It truly wasn't about Jessica, Kira. It was about my mother fundamentally not understanding that I need and want to find someone on my own terms. Someone who... He paused, his eyes settling on Kira with an intensity that genuinely made her heart catch in her chest. Someone who would spontaneously help a complete stranger hide from his mother in the romance section of a bookstore, just because he looked desperate. Kira laughed softly, the sound tinkling in the quiet night. So that's your type? Bookstore accomplices? Apparently, Flynn said, his voice dropping to a low, husky register as he took a deliberate step closer to her. Is it all right if I kiss you, Kira? Instead of answering, Kira closed the remaining distance between them. The kiss was initially gentle, a tentative exploration, but it quickly deepened with a powerful warmth that seemed to spread through her entire body, lighting her up from the inside out. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Kira felt as though something vital and fundamental had shifted permanently in her world. I've been wanting to do that since you found me hiding behind that shelf, Flynn admitted, resting his forehead against hers. Even though you probably thought I might be a serial killer, or at the very least severely unbalanced. Especially then, he corrected, smiling widely. You were very convincing with that architectural history story. They walked back to Flynn's car hand in hand, the conversation flowing easily between teasing banter and more genuine, serious topics about life goals and family. By the time he drove her home, Kira felt as though she had known Flynn for years, rather than just a few short days. At her apartment door, Flynn kissed her again, more briefly this time, but with a palpable promise of much more to come. I'd like to see you again soon. Very soon. I'd like that too, Kira replied, once again surprising herself with the depth of her immediate conviction. What followed was a whirlwind 2 weeks of dating that managed to feel both incredibly exciting and perfectly comfortable at the same time. Flynn introduced her to intimate art galleries, several other hidden gem restaurants, and even a smoky, small jazz club where they danced closely until midnight. Kira reciprocated, showing him her favorite independent bookstores, taking him on a private, after-hours tour of the university library, and introducing him to her secret writing spot within the peaceful botanical gardens. What Kira couldn't quite figure out, however, was the precise nature of Flynn's work. He was obviously successful. His clothes were expensive, though always understated, and he never displayed any anxiety about money, but he remained curiously vague about the specific details of his real estate development job. He mentioned abstract concepts like projects and meetings, but never named specific companies or structures. It wasn't until their third weekend together that Kira started to truly understand why. They were walking through a particularly historic section of downtown when Flynn stopped abruptly in front of a massive construction site where an elegant, aging building was undergoing extremely careful renovation. This is one of mine, he said quietly, a distinct note of pride evident in his voice as he gazed up at the partially completed structure. We're converting it into mixed-use space, affordable housing units on the upper floors, local businesses on the ground level, and we've preserved virtually all the original architectural details. One of yours? Kira repeated, genuinely confused. I thought you simply worked for a development company. Flynn looked suddenly and deeply uncomfortable. I do, in a way. I own Parker Developments. Kira blinked, processing the magnitude of the information drop. Parker Developments? As in, the massive firm that is currently renovating half the downtown waterfront? That Parker Developments? Flynn nodded slowly, watching her reaction with palpable anxiety. I should have been much clearer from the very beginning. I genuinely apologize. So, you're not just in real estate development, Kira said slowly, connecting the dots. You are a... What? A multi-millionaire developer? That would be an accurate description, Flynn admitted, looking truly worried about how she would integrate this news. Does that change things for you? Kira paused, taking a long moment to think. Did it change things? The Flynn she had come to know over the past 14 days was thoughtful, reliably funny, and surprisingly grounded. He listened intently when she spoke, remembered minute details about her preferences, and never, ever made her feel anything less than completely valued. No, she said finally, meeting his gaze. It absolutely doesn't change how I feel about you, the person. But I am intensely curious why you weren't upfront about this from the start. Flynn ran a nervous hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a definite sign of internal stress. When people discover the scale of the money and the name, it immediately changes how they perceive me. Some suddenly want something from me. Others instantly make unwarranted assumptions about the kind of shallow person I must be. I desperately wanted you to get to know me, just me, before the CEO of Parker Developments entered the picture. Kira found she could easily understand that fear. Well, for what it's worth, I genuinely liked Flynn, the bookshelf-hiding real estate guy. And I still like Flynn, the millionaire developer. But no more big, fundamental secrets. Agreed? A wave of visible relief washed over his face. No more secrets. Promise. He took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. And just for the record, Parker Developments is worth significantly more than a few million. But I think that conversation can wait for another, less shocking day. Kira's eyes widened slightly at the clarification, but she decided to take this further revelation completely in stride. Okay, Mr. Big Shot Developer, why don't you show me around your project here? I want to see what all the fuss is truly about. Flynn's face instantly lit up with genuine enthusiasm as he began explaining the intricate renovation process, pointing out the preserved original features and the specific innovations they had incorporated. His passion for the work was clearly evident, and Kira found herself even more attracted to him, watching him talk about something he clearly loved so deeply. As the weeks continued to pass, Kira and Flynn's relationship deepened, evolving far beyond the initial, thrilling novelty. He gradually began to introduce her to his world, starting with quiet dinners with business associates, where she discovered he wasn't just respected, but genuinely liked by his employees. Then to charity events where she learned about his substantial but carefully quiet philanthropic work, and eventually he introduced her to his home. Flynn's house was not at all what Kira had anticipated. Instead of a sterile, sleek penthouse or an ostentatious mansion, it was a beautifully renovated historic home nestled in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It was large, yes, but not showy. It was filled with overflowing bookshelves, many of the furnishings he had built himself, and an obvious, deep appreciation for true craftsmanship over disposable luxury. This truly feels like you, Kira said as he showed her around, running her hand along a handsome, solid bookshelf he had crafted from reclaimed wood. That, Flynn replied, pulling her close for a warm kiss, is the best compliment you could possibly give me. It was during a quiet dinner at his house one evening, about 2 months into their exclusive relationship, that Flynn's phone began buzzing repeatedly with his mother's easily recognizable ringtone. I should probably take this, he said apologetically, glancing down at the caller ID. She'll just continue to call until I do. Kira nodded, sipping her wine as Flynn answered the call. She could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was immediately clear that his mother was once again in aggressive matchmaking mode. Mother, I've told you. Flynn began, then sighed heavily in exasperation. No, I absolutely do not want to meet Charles's daughter because I am actively seeing someone. Yes, seriously. No, it's not a work thing. He glanced over at Kira with an amused, exasperated expression. Actually, yes, you have sort of met her. She was at the bookstore that day. No, Mother, not Jessica. The other woman. The one who was looking for the obscure architecture book. Yes, that was a setup, but not the way you think it was. Flynn paused, listening patiently for a moment. Then his expression softened considerably. I would love for you to meet her properly, Mother. Dinner next Sunday. I'll ask her right now. After hanging up, Flynn rejoined Kira at the table. So that was my mother. She would like to meet you properly this time, not while you are creating sophisticated diversions in public bookstores. Does she know that I was your willing accomplice in escaping her setup? Kira asked, highly amused by the scenario. She does now, he confirmed. Apparently, she thought you were incredibly clever and quick-witted with your architectural history queries. She's already decided. Already impressed. Flynn took her hand across the table, his thumb tracing the curve of her knuckle. You don't have to say yes, he murmured, his gaze serious. My mother can be intense. She views these dinners as strategic campaigns, not casual meals. I'd love to meet her, Kira said, surprised to find the truth ringing in her voice. It wasn't just curiosity. She felt a sudden, fierce desire to fully integrate into his world. After all, I should thank her. If she hadn't tried to set you up with Jessica, we never would have met. Flynn's smile was warm, a deep, comfortable crinkle around his eyes as he leaned across the table, oblivious to the other diners, to kiss her. Have I mentioned lately that I'm falling in love with you? The words, spoken so simply yet with profound certainty, sent a clean, thrilling jolt through Kira. They hadn't exchanged the full declaration of I love you yet, though she'd been carrying the weight of the feeling in her chest for weeks. No, you haven't mentioned that, but it's good to hear because I'm falling in love with you, too. The dinner with Flynn's mother the following Sunday went surprisingly, even theatrically, well. Evelyn Parker was indeed intense. She commanded the room with sharp intelligence and a formidable designer suit. But she was also genuinely warm and zeroed in on Kira's work at the university library with focused interest. She didn't condescend. She asked incisive questions about collection development and student outreach. By the end of the evening, she had completely disarmed Kira, pulling out old leather-bound photo albums and showing Kira Flynn's baby pictures, complete with stories about his childhood attempts at home improvement. One memorable tale involved a toddler Flynn and a small hammer, which had once resulted in an accidentally dismantled dining room table, a casualty of his early, aggressive renovation phase. I knew from the moment I saw you in that bookstore that you were special, Evelyn confided in a low, conspiratorial voice as Flynn went to the kitchen to fetch coffee. She squeezed Kira's hand. The way you manufactured that entire story about architectural books on the spot, creative and quick thinking. Exactly what my Flynn needs. I thought you were trying to set him up with Jessica, Kira said, genuinely confused, the pieces of their origin story suddenly shifting. Evelyn waved her hand dismissively, the gesture elegant and practiced. Jessica was never right for him, too concerned with status and appearances. I just needed Flynn to start thinking seriously about settling down, about making the effort to escape. Sometimes a mother has to create a little motivation. Are you saying you engineered that whole scene, knowing he'd run and potentially bump into someone else? Kira asked, beginning to wonder if she had wildly underestimated Evelyn Parker, who suddenly seemed less a society matriarch and more a master strategist. Let's just say I wasn't surprised when he disappeared around the corner, Evelyn replied, her blue eyes sparkling with a knowing wink. Flynn thinks he's so clever, but he's exactly like his father. Henry used to hide from my mother's setups too, until the day he didn't. Some things skip a generation, but not everything. When Flynn returned with the coffee tray, he found Kira and his mother laughing together, the easy familiarity of old friends hanging in the air. Should I be worried? He asked, setting down the tray with a bewildered expression. Very, They replied in unison, causing another burst of laughter that echoed through the otherwise quiet Parker dining room. As their relationship approached the 6-month mark, Kira and Flynn settled into a comfortable, deeply satisfying rhythm. She kept her small apartment as a sanctuary for solitude and writing, but she stayed at his sprawling, quiet house most nights. Their joint life was structured around sweet traditions. The chaos of Sunday morning trips to the farmer's market, Wednesday evening cooking experiments, some disastrous, some Michelin-worthy, and quiet Saturdays spent reading companionably, curled up on matching leather chairs in his vast, book-lined home library. Flynn's work remained demanding, requiring transatlantic calls and focused intensity, but he made Kira an unquestionable priority. He often surprised her with spontaneous lunch deliveries at the university library or tiny, folded post-it notes hidden in her bag or inside her books with messages that made her smile throughout the day. Reminders that he was thinking of her even when miles away. Kira eventually introduced Flynn to her small circle of friends, a group of academics, artists, and perpetually struggling writers. They were initially intimidated by his polished manner and obvious wealth, sensing the weight of his reputation, but they were quickly won over by his genuine interest in their lives and his unreserved willingness to join their tradition of fiercely competitive board game nights. It was on one such game night, after Flynn and Kira had soundly defeated everyone at a particularly high-stakes round of Pictionary, that her friend Marcus pulled her aside, a half-empty wine glass in his hand. "He's not what I expected," Marcus admitted, watching Flynn expertly clear the snack table. "When you said he was some hot-shot developer, I thought he'd be a jerk," Kira supplied with a knowing smile. "Pretty much, but he's actually great. He listens, and he looks at you, Kira, like you're the most fascinating person he's ever met, like you hold all the secrets of the universe in your smile." "The feeling is mutual," Kira replied, her gaze drifting across the room where Flynn was laughing with her other friends, completely at ease, integrating seamlessly into the life she had built before him. Later that night, as they walked arm-in-arm back to Flynn's classic car, the cool night air refreshing after the intense game, he squeezed her hand tighter. "I've been thinking," he said, his tone deliberately casual, but with an undercurrent of nervousness that instantly caught her attention and made her heart pick up speed. "Dangerous," Kira teased, slowing their steps. "What about? About how much I love waking up next to you, and how empty, how completely cavernous my house feels on the nights you're not there." Flynn stopped walking completely and turned to face her, the yellow glow of a nearby streetlight illuminating the seriousness in his eyes. "Move in with me. Officially, I mean." Kira's breath hitched. "Are you sure? It's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything," Flynn said, reaching out to cup her face in his hands. "I love you, Kira. I want to build a life with you, starting with just sharing a morning routine." "I love you, too," she replied, rising onto her tiptoes in the shadow of the light post to kiss him deeply. "And yes, I'll move in with you." The move happened gradually over the next few weeks, a process less of combining possessions and more of creating space. Flynn cleared out an entire section of his master closet for her clothes and gave Kira an entire sun-drenched, second-floor room to serve as her private library and writing studio. One weekend, when she returned from visiting her parents, he surprised her with a magnificent, custom-built desk that fit perfectly into the bay window overlooking the blooming garden. The wood was rich, dark walnut, smoothed and polished to a satin finish. "So you can finally focus on your children's book," he explained, watching as she ran her hands reverently over the smooth surface. "I want you to have a space that is entirely, unequivocally yours." It was in that room, bathed in soft afternoon light, 6 months later, that Flynn proposed. It wasn't a grand, public gesture or an elaborate setup. It happened on a rainy Sunday morning as they sat together reading. Kira immersed in her manuscript, Flynn reviewing complicated zoning plans for a new city development. "I just realized something," Flynn said, setting down his architectural papers, his voice quiet. "What's that?" Kira asked, still focused on editing a tricky paragraph on her laptop. "I've been hiding from my mother's setups my entire adult life. And then I meet you, the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with, while hiding from one of those very setups." That made Kira look up, closing her laptop with a decisive click. Are you saying your mother was right all along? Because I'm not sure my ego can handle that fact. Flynn laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and he moved immediately to kneel beside her chair, shifting the comfortable weight of his presence closer. I'm saying that sometimes the best things happen when you're actively trying to avoid them. And finding you, Kira, that's the single best thing that has ever happened to me. He reached into the inner pocket of his robe and pulled out a small, navy velvet box, which felt heavy and significant in his palm. I've had this for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. But I just realized that every single mundane moment with you is perfect. Kira Lambert, will you marry me? The ring was stunning. An antique, deeply personal design with a brilliant center diamond surrounded by smaller, perfectly cut stones that caught the dim morning light streaming through the rain-streaked window. Yes, Kira said, tears immediately filling her eyes as Flynn gently slipped the ring onto her finger. 1,000 times. Yes. They were married the following spring in the city's botanical gardens, the same lush, verdant sanctuary where Kira had taken Flynn on one of their earliest, tentative dates. It was a relatively small, intimate wedding by the standards of the Parker family's social circle, focused solely on family and close friends. Evelyn Parker sat beaming in the front row, looking absolutely triumphant, as if the whole beautiful thing had been her meticulously crafted plan all along. At the reception, Flynn's best man, Henry, toasted the couple with a knowing smile and a sly dig at the groom. To Flynn and Kira, proof that sometimes, hiding in the dusty corner of a quiet bookstore is the best career move a self-respecting millionaire can possibly make. Later, as they danced under strings of glittering lights laced through the garden trees, Flynn pulled Kira close, resting his chin on her hair. Happy? He asked softly, the music a gentle pulse around them. Completely, she replied, resting her head on his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of his expensive cologne and comfort. Though I'm still waiting for you to thank me properly for saving you from that blind date. Flynn's laugh vibrated warmly against her ear. I think I just promised you my entire life and fortune, Kira. Isn't that thanks enough? Almost, Kira said with a slow, contented smile. But I think I'll keep coming up with creative ways for you to show your gratitude for the next 50 years or so. That sounds perfect to me, Flynn replied, pulling her into a long, secure kiss as the music played on and their future stretched before them, bright with promise, deep commitment, and the sweet surprise of unexpected joy. 1 year later, Kira's children's book, The Architect Who Loved Stories, was published to critical acclaim, featuring vibrant illustrations by a renowned artist Flynn had quietly connected her with months before. 2 years after that, they welcomed twins, a boy and a girl, who would grow up surrounded by books in the strong, beautiful home their father had built and their mother had filled with stories. And sometimes when people asked how they met, Flynn would simply say, "She rescued me in a bookstore." And Kira would always add with a luminous smile, "And he's been thanking me ever since."